Please make yourself comfortable. Tonight, we are traveling not across miles, but across years. We are going to step through the frost etchings on a windowpane, back to a December in the heart of the 1930s. The air is sharp with cold, and sharper still with an economic reality that has touched nearly every home: the Great Depression. Our theme is not one of grand celebration or lavish excess. It is something far more profound, more human. Our theme is the Christmas of the Great Depression, a study in thrift, in community, and in a quiet, stubborn ingenuity that became, in itself, a form of hope. To understand this Christmas, we must first feel the texture of the era. Forget the glossy catalogs of today. Imagine instead a world where the dominant sound is not jingle bells, but the soft, anxious rustle of a newspaper's want ads, the sigh of a mother counting coins at the kitchen table, the hollow echo of a nearly empty coal scuttle being carried down to the basement. Men in once-sharp suits now line up outside soup kitchens, their breath making ghosts in the air. Farmers on the parched Dust Bowl plains watch topsoil, not snow, drift against their fences. Yet in the face of this, the calendar insists. It is Christmas time. And so, families, communities, individuals faced a poignant question. How do you keep the light of Christmas burning when you can scarcely afford the candle? The answer was not found in stores. It was found in attics, in scrap bags, in the natural world just outside the door, and most of all, in the clever, careful work of one's own hands. The Depression-era Christmas was a handmade Christmas. Let us begin with the centerpiece, the tree. For many, the purchase of a pre-cut fir from a lot was an impossible luxury. And so, the ritual of the tree became an adventure. A father and his children would walk into the winter woods, or the sparse, city-owned parkland at the edge of town with a handsaw. The search was for a tree that others had passed over, perhaps a little sparse on one side, or shorter than the rest. Listen to that sound. Not the quick buzz of a power tool, but the patient, manual work of the saw. Each pull was an effort. Each fragrant release of sap was a promise. This tree was not perfect by commercial standards, but it was theirs. It was free. And its imperfections would become the canvas for their creativity. Now, the decorations. The glittering glass baubles from Germany, the tinsel from years past. These were carefully unwrapped from yellowed newspaper, their numbers sadly diminished by the accidents of time. To fill the gaps, the making began. In kitchens across America, a scent arose that was not just of cookies, but of glue. A simple paste of flour and water was mixed in a bowl. This paste was the magic ingredient. Strips of newspaper, catalog pages, or the colorful, pulp-based pages of Liberty, or the Saturday Evening Post, were dipped and layered over inflated pig bladders, or shaped clay forms to make papier-mâché ornaments, angels with newsprint wings, Santas with headlines on their robes. Once dry, they were painted with the last dregs of house paint, or highlighted with precious flakes of silver or gold from a broken mirror. Meanwhile, at the dining table, another craft unfolded. A humble foodstuff became art, the cranberry. Strings of cranberries and popcorn were a staple, but in the Depression, this took on a new patience. The popcorn was yesterday's, slightly stale, so it wouldn't crumble. The needle was long and blunt. A single string could take an hour. The hands that did this work, a child's fumbling fingers, a grandmother's knotted, arthritic joints, were practicing a meditation. Each tiny, edible bead was a wish, a prayer, a moment of focused creation in a world of uncertainty. Aluminum foil, if a family had any from a piece of chewing gum or a tobacco packet, was smoothed and resmoothed over a thumb to make tiny, radiant stars. Scraps of felt from a worn-out hat were stitched into little stockings or animals. But perhaps the most iconic decoration was the simplest, the chain. These chains of red and green construction paper, or the more muted browns of butcher's paper colored with berry juice, draped from corner to corner in living rooms. They cost almost nothing but time. And in their repetitive, colorful links, they became a powerful symbol. We are linked together, this family, this community. Our strength is in our connection. Under such a tree, the gifts were modest, almost archaeological in their thoughtfulness. The guiding principle was use it up, wear it out, make do, or do without. Gifts were almost exclusively practical, or so cleverly repurposed that their practicality was disguised as delight. A father might spend evenings in the garage, not on a car he could no longer afford to run, but on a wooden toy. A scrap of maple became a dollhouse with sandpaper-smoothed walls. A broken roller skate yielded its wheels for a go-kart. A mother would unravel an old, moth-eaten sweater, saving the yarn. That wool, washed and reknitted, would become a pair of socks for her son, with a subtle stripe of color saved from a different project years ago. For a daughter, a doll was not bought, but born. A stocking stuffed with sawdust or rags, embroidered with a face. A dress sewn from a floral scrap of a worn-out party dress from better days. Perhaps the most cherished gift was an orange in the heart of winter. A single, bright, fragrant Florida orange in the toe of a stocking was a marvel. It was tropical sunshine, condensed into a peel. A child would often save it for days, carrying it in a pocket, piercing the skin just to smell the burst of citrus, a scent of faraway abundance. The Christmas meal was an exercise in strategic celebration. The turkey or goose was often a communal affair, a shared bird among several families, or one provided by a local church or fraternal order. The side dishes were born of pantry endurance. Vegetables from the summer garden, now canned or stored in root cellars, pickled beans, stewed tomatoes, applesauce. Baking was done with substitutes. Butter was replaced by lard or a cheaper margarine. Sugar was stretched with molasses or corn syrup. Eggs were few. Yet, From these limitations came beloved traditions, the dense, spicy simplicity of a gingerbread loaf, sweetened with sorghum. The humble depression cake, made without eggs, milk, or butter, using vinegar and soda for lift, and raisins for precious sweetness. The celebration extended beyond the home, into the very fabric of the community. This was a time when radio was the great unifier. On Christmas Eve, families would huddle around the cathedral-like console of their Philco or RCA radio, its warm glow a hearth of sound. They would listen to President Roosevelt's calming fireside chat, or a Christmas special from New York. In that moment, the lonely farmhouse in Iowa and the cramped apartment in Chicago were connected, listening to the same program, sharing the same carols. Community trees sprang up in town squares, often sponsored by local service clubs. Charities like the Salvation Army, with their bell ringers, became a more crucial bridge between haves and have-nots than ever before. There was a profound understanding that poverty was not a personal failure, but a shared storm to be weathered together. A neighbor might give a jar of precious preserves. Children would be invited next door for a slice of that vinegar cake. The spirit was not one of despair, but of inventive resilience. A new game might be invented using bottle caps and a chalked board. A shadow puppet theater crafted from a sheet, and a flashlight would provide an evening's entertainment. The wrapping paper was yesterday's comic strips, or the brown paper from a grocery parcel, decorated with hand-drawn holly leaves. As the evening wound down, after the simple meal was eaten, and the one or two gifts were marveled over, the family would sit in the soft light of the tree, adorned with its popcorn chains and newspaper angels, and perhaps sing. The songs were the old, familiar ones. Silent Night, O Little Town of Bethlehem. But the lines held new weight. The hopes and fears of all the years are met in the tonight. In that quiet living room, hopes and fears were tangible companions. The Christmas of the Great Depression was, in essence, a distillation. It stripped away the commercial wrapper and revealed the core of the holiday, the light we make for each other in the darkness. It was about the gift of time over money, of thoughtfulness over expense, of shared burden over solitary struggle. The objects created, the paper chains, the sock dolls, the repurposed toys, were not just things. They were physical manifestations of love, patience, and an unbreakable will to affirm joy, even on the most modest terms. When we look back now, through the comfortable distance of decades, we might see lack, but if we listen closely, past the rustle of the newspaper chains, the snip of the scissors, the patient sanding of wood, we can hear something else. We can hear the sound of ingenuity, the sound of care, the quiet, powerful sound of a people who, when given very little, chose to make so very much out of it. That is the legacy of a Depression Christmas. Not what was absent from the table, but what was present in the heart, a lesson in how the most enduring light is often kindled not by grand gestures, but by countless, tiny, careful acts of making do and making magic.